Hello YouTubers, welcome to the channel. I'm Wayne, and as always I want to invite you to subscribe to Wayne's World of Mandolin if you didn't already. And if you want some Skype sessions, you can always hit me up. I'm going to have an email in the description of each video that I put up here. All right, today I guess you could say is an eat your vegetables lesson, if you wanted to look at it that way, but hopefully I can make you become ambitious and encouraged to maybe practice your scales in a way that you haven't up to this point, because I have a lot of people that have maybe they are coming to an understanding of playing the scale over more than just the root note of that scale and applying the modes that I've talked about on some of the other videos. Well, to make yourself better at playing the scale, if all you ever do is practice in a linear way playing through the scale, you could struggle creatively with doing different things to fill particular amounts of space musically. If I'm playing this G scale and I'm kind of bouncing around over that scale, it feels really natural to me. And you can arrive at being able to do that through learning a lot of different fiddle tunes and just spending your life playing the mandolin. But if you're not somebody that's a career musician and you haven't played just hours and hours and hours learning fiddle tunes, being a part of material that a band works up, traveling, I mean, if you're playing a gig and you end up spending nearly an hour at sound check and you play, and then you play the actual shows that night, look at the number of hours that just all of that adds up, and it helps us to become players who can kind of dance around on the fretboard over the scale that way. If that isn't your life and you still want to move on and be able to apply these scales in a more musical kind of way, what I'm going to talk about today can really help. But it is, to some extent, an eat your vegetables kind of lesson. So with this scale, the G major scale, we're going to look at that first shape that's happening on the G and the D string. Open, 2, 4, 5. Open, 2, 4, 5. Those are the fret numbers that I'm playing. Then the bottom half of the neck, open, 2, 3, 5. Open, 2, 3, 5. Adding that A note just to make it look the same way. Visually, the top half is one thing that I've memorized. The bottom half is another. I'm kind of speeding through this because a lot of you have probably already are familiar with the scale itself. But here's what we could do if we play 3 notes at a time. Just going to stop on that G note for now, and we don't have to worry about that last interval. You get why we're doing that. For the sake of it just sounding like G up to G, we could stop at that note. The great way to practice this would be what we're going to call broken thirds. And if you've played through that exercise, every note that you play is like the starting point of 3 notes that you're going to play. What we want to do is leave that middle note out so that we just play up to the third. 1, 2, 3. That movement in a third like that's very logical that we want to learn, because our chords are based on intervals of 3. And so many melodies move in thirds like that. So you want to be able, if you need to fill up a certain space, if you've done those exercises, it's going to help you to play across the scale. But we don't want to stop there. I know you've probably heard scales practiced this way before, where we would play 4 notes. Same exact concept, just 4 notes now. scale in fourths. You can take plenty off of the tempo of that to practice it if you want to, and try to get that in a very rhythmic kind of way so that it has a nice feel to it when you play it. Then beyond that, same thing that we did with the thirds, let's leave both of those middle notes out. Instead of the 4 notes, I'm going to play the root note, then move up to the 4, which is a C note. Then the same thing, the A note. I would play the D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, when I get to the B note. And it becomes these shapes. The scale in broken fourths. I know what you probably are thinking right now, that this doesn't really sound like, if you're really into bluegrass and that's what you do, you may be thinking that doesn't sound like the fiddle tune music or bluegrass melodies that I play. You should still do it, because if you work on these fourths and make that easy, get to where you can play this exercise well, it's going to make the thirds feel super easy. And it's just important to do all this work. When we play through these exercises without even realizing it, it becomes like an ear training, that we get better at hearing melodies and being able to learn melodies faster because of doing the things that I'm talking about today. So next would be the fifths. And I've never really played those all 5 notes like that. But this one doesn't feel like it's as important to put eggs in this basket because we're tuned in fifths. But I do want to point this out. Here's your root note. The D is the 5. The same thing. See how the notes, they're parallel. They're just stacked on top of each other. Here would be the E, be an E minor if we're thinking about the chord scale. Look at this next one, F sharp. Now my fingers are at an angle to play that 5th above, because C sharp, that's not a note of the G major scale. So on that half diminished chord of the chord scale, we do actually see a different shape when we're playing the scale in 5s like that. Then we would be back to a G note, and once again the notes parallel. Interesting thing to check out if you never have done that before, but again, not something that I necessarily practiced a lot. The next one, the scale in 6. This could easily be one of those studies that you feel like you've already learned it in a different way. If you've played double stops, I have a couple of videos up about double stops, and if you recognize, here's the G major scale, closed position, and the way that I can play these shapes, this inversion of a double stop. If you're familiar with those, that is the scale in 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, I never rehearsed these like playing all 6 of the notes, but you do really need to recognize those shapes across the whole fretboard. If you play there, open, 2nd fret. Then visually, if you just think about where your G scale intervals are in 1st position, you can kind of visualize where the fingers are going to go. You should know that that's G. Just keep your G scale in mind. Now back to 1st position. Okay, we know C and D, those shapes are going to happen. We're back to the root there. Again, very easy to just kind of take the study of those double stops and slip it into the place of these 6s, because we don't want to leave any of it out. This next one, the 7s. Again, I never 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. Never really practiced it like that. And don't tend to stay in first position with this concept. Here's the reason. If I play the root and then 7 above, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that next shape, it's going to be representing an A minor chord, really like an A minor 7 chord. Okay, look at what happens with the next one. If I don't move that shape and shift up to second position, I'm going to have to cross pick. I'm going over the D string to get to that A note. So I always felt like I was learning more. Take those 8 notes and think of these as 8 shapes to represent the scale in sevens. There's that 4, the shape gets bigger. You might feel like this is almost redundant. If you've learned the chord scale and like how to play the harmonized arpeggios, it's like we're just playing the corners of those shapes. Then we're back to D with a C note being a 7 above. Then E would represent E minor. The F sharp would represent F sharp half diminished. And then back to the root of G. Once again, if you're not into shifting the tonal center and using different modes of the scale and thinking a little bit outside of the box as an improvisational player, you might hear that and feel like it doesn't have anything to do with your approach or the music that you want to be a part of. It doesn't mean that you're not supposed to do the work, because it just helps the fretboard to come together, to have an understanding of these different intervals and what their relationship sounds like when you hear those 2 different notes. We grow a lot through doing this. And again, I say this at the end of a lot of sessions. I don't want you to feel like you have to do this with every single scale. By the time you get through 3 or 4 different scales, learning this in first position, you're going to get to a point where you're able to feel what's going to happen with that shape just by ear. You have that connection to the fretboard to be able to apply this kind of thing, short of such an involved study as it feels like it is at first for most people. So I hope this helps, and that it goes like back to the front of the video, thinking about just dancing over the scale like that in a musical way. If you'll, drag yourself through this and eat some vegetables, it's gonna make a difference.